You are listening to the IFH Podcast Network. For more amazing filmmaking and screenwriting podcasts, just go to ifhpodcastnetwork.com.
Welcome to Filmmaking Conversations with Damian Swaby. Listen to conversations with award-winning filmmakers, directors from the golden age of TV, and creatives from the indie film community who continue to inspire the next generation of filmmakers. And now, over to your host, Damian Swaby.
Scott,
Perfect.
How are you today?
Sir, Damian, great. Thanks for having me, man. I'm really excited. I'm really honored to join in.
Well, I love having talented people on. I watch some pilots sometimes, and I'm not particularly drawn to a lot of them. So watching yours was a breath of fresh air.
Wow, thanks, man. Thank you.
It left me wanting more.
Cool.
And one of the biggest compliments I think I can give is that I didn't watch it thinking it was a pilot.
Cool.
If that makes sense. Sometimes you watch a pilot and you think, okay, I'm watching a pilot. Whereas I kind of sat down and watched yours and I thought I'm watching something.
Like it felt to you like it was a show that was like on the air.
Yeah.
Is that like it exists? Like you should be able to at the end just like click over to like episode 2.
Yeah.
And then watch the rest of the season. That's great, man. Wow.
That's how it felt.
That's cool.
And so I thought, gotta get you on.
Yeah.
And, discuss that. And
also
discuss a text, not a text. What am I talking about? A tweet that you put out.
Yes. Sure.
Which was very, very interesting. And we'll get to the tweet and we'll get to your brilliant pilot soon.
Oh, thank you, sir.
But Scott,
I'm at your service. So take me wherever you want to go,
No sweat. No problem. Thank you for that. Thank you for that.
Of course.
So Scott, you've had a lot of, you've got a good history in film and everything like that. And you've had great runs at film festivals as well, which is very nice when you get that kind of notification. I don't know if you used Film Freeway and you get the email, or what do you use? And
it was the other one that I can't remember now. There's Film Freeway and there's one more. Or I think we might have applied directly through like IMDb, but something to that effect. Yes. Yeah. I was on a vacation with my then girlfriend in New York City, and we were staying at the Hudson, which is a great little hotel. And I got a voicemail from a number that I didn't recognize. And I listened, and it was the director of SeriesFest letting us know that we'd gotten in. And I just remember just throwing my phone away from my ear and just it was, it felt like winning the lottery or the sweepstakes or something. But yeah, absolutely. It's a great feeling.
And what film was this that
was for Neither and Both. Yeah. That was the first. So I'm from Denver, Colorado, and I had always kind of dreamed of debuting a film at Red Rocks, like the amphitheater concert venue. And so SeriesFest, even we didn't screen at Red Rocks, but they had their like opening night ceremony there. And so I had written a letter about how, that was like a dream of mine. And I think it kind of caught their eye and it gave our pilot a little bit of wind. So that was really like Neither and Both had gone through a lot of festival rejections because we were kind of, it's like a 30-minute, pilot, and it was kind of too long to be a short, but of course it's not long enough to be a feature. So it was really tough to program, understandably, for a lot of festivals. And we purposefully, I wanted, I love to joke that like we were the half-hour drama pilot before it was cool. I had this thought of like, because, historically, if you're 30 minutes long, you're a comedy. If you're an hour long, you're a drama. And so I just kind of love this idea of having this series that would just be this like fast-hitting 30-minute sort of, dramatic narrative. And it turned out that I think we would have gotten more traction had we made an hour-long pilot at the time, because there were more avenues for that. And so long story short, that was getting that phone call or the proverbial Film Freeway email notification was kind of like the first ray of sunshine in kind of a dark and cloudy festival submission process that we kind of had gotten turned down pretty much everywhere. And then I think it was SeriesFest, and then we found out about Cannes, and then we found out about Austin Film Fest, and it was just it was suddenly just like all this great momentum, and yeah, holy cow.
I love that. Well done.
Thanks,
you
sir.
said you're from Colorado.
From Denver. Yeah, I grew up there.
Colorado.
Yeah.
What was that like, and what was the film scene for you growing up in Denver?
It's funny, as a kid, I was never like the Spielberg type, like running around with like a camcorder or whatever. I just always I loved movies. And so kind of like the way that I got more into filmmaking is that, so I'm an only child. And when I was in like 6th grade, so maybe like 12 or 13, I like came up, I was like, all right, what's like my life plan? Or like, what do I like to do that I could get paid to do? And I came up with 2 options. One was like a professional mountain biker, because I was doing all this like mountain biking and stunts and whatnot. And then the other was a movie critic. So someone I thought, you know, I love movies, I could get paid to like see movies and write about them. That'd be great. And so like, I felt really good about those options. And then I was out riding my mountain bike near my home, and I broke my collarbone. And like, I had to like carry my bike home. And the whole way I'm I'm in so much pain. And I'm like, just get me home, and then I'll be okay. And so I get home, and my dad's there, and I'm like, hey, I think I'm hurt. And he starts yelling at me because I didn't know that our like family health insurance had lapsed. So like our old plan had stopped and our new one hadn't started. So like the whole way to the ER, he's just, you know, he's like yelling at me, and I'm just in so much pain. I'm like, let's just get to the hospital. So we get to the hospital, and because it's a collarbone, there's not much that they can do. They give you kind of like a sling and some painkillers. Like I couldn't get like a cast or anything. And so then like, you know, I would be sleeping in the weeks following, and I would roll over and like put all my weight on it, and it would just like be like a shooting pain that would wake me up. So like somewhere in all of that, I remember thinking like, okay, so maybe this mountain biking thing isn't quite for me. Maybe we should go look at that movie critic thing. And then that kind of like led me more. And then I saw a little film by the name of Fight Club that kind of helped me understand that there's someone kind of running things. It's not a writer, it's not an actor, that there's someone like guiding the camera, and that's me. That's what I want to do. And that's the rest of the story. So I was really, I made my first film when I went away to college when I was 18. So I kind of got a late start by today's standards, but I was always loving movies and watching them obsessively. But yeah, there wasn't much of a film scene in Denver at the time. I think it's gotten much better since I've left, hilariously enough. SeriesFest, the festival that we got neither and both into, that was in Denver. So I kind of felt like homecoming king, like to great. Like be, you know, like leave Denver, go to LA, and then be able to go back with like a pilot. And that was their first season. So it was kind of a marquee event. But yeah, so for me, it was a little bit longer of a journey to get there. And it was a little bit more kind of on my own time and you know, just my own rhythms, I guess.
Cool. That makes complete sense. So what made you want to leave?
Have you thought of upgrading your cinematography game? Would you like to have an ASC cinematographer mentor you for free? Join veteran cinematographer Suki Medenzovic, ASC, Disney, Pixar, FX Networks, Netflix, American Horror Story. As he teaches you how to create beautiful images using 3 lighting techniques he has mastered on film sets over his 30-plus years in the film industry. Each technique uses basic, low-cost lighting equipment so that anyone can achieve beautiful visuals no matter your project's budget. If you want to take your cinematography to the next level, visit filmmakingconversations.com to sign up for instant access.
Yeah, so it's kind of funny. I had never visited Los Angeles because I just knew that I was going to live there for a large chunk of time. And so I was pretty convinced that I was going to hate it. And I ended up loving it from like day one. And so I don't know, that's kind of a funny question, because in my mind, it's just like, if you want to work in politics, you go to Washington, D.C. If you want to make movies, you go to Los Angeles, California. And so that was, I think somewhere around like 15 or 16 is where that kind of clicked in. And I was a little bit of a slacker in high school. It wasn't, there was like, I had like wonderful English teachers. Shout out to Chip Lee and Ann Strobridge, Luis Terrazas, like history. And so I had all these great teachers who like really, really sparked knowledge and curiosity. And I loved their classes, but I couldn't really be bothered like with like, calculus or whatever. Yeah. So like my GPA wasn't great. And then I think around like sophomore year of high school, like the USC film liaison would come and give like a talk, and then I'd be talking to them and I'd be like so passionate and inspired. And then I'd see that like their GPA cutoff was like way above where I was at. And so I was kind of like, oh man, I got to kick it in the butt. And so, I kind of like saved the day a little bit my junior and senior year. But I think somewhere in there, I just kind of, it was like, if I wanted to be a senator, I would have gone to Washington, but I wanted to be a director. So I came to LA. It was almost like a foregone conclusion. So I don't know if I can quite answer that question for you fully. I just knew I had to do it. I was always going to do it, and I knew I had to do it. And here I am.
You got to do what you got to do. And from what I've seen, you've made the right decision. You're doing some great work where you are.
Thank you.
You say you enjoy living there.
We'll go with that. I like your vision.
So what exactly inspired Neither and Both? And tell us before you tell us what inspired you to make it. Sorry. Tell us what it's about for those of us who haven't seen the version.
Absolutely. It's funny because I have a wildly specific answer to that question, which I think is normally a little bit unusual. But so Neither and Both is a story about a young woman who's kind of part private investigator, part escort. And so she's hired to kind of follow like suspected adulterers and kind of expose men's misdeeds and whatnot. And so the pilot kind of covers the story of a high-level businesswoman hiring her to expose the infidelity of her CEO. So this businesswoman thinks that by kind of ruining a marriage above her, that she'll get promoted. And so it's kind of you could call it, it's like kind of, I guess, like a neo-noir, but I kind of see it as like a bank robbery, except in that seems like it would be easy, but there's kind of layers of intrigue, and it's like really turned into just like a pissing contest in the creative stages. And there's just like a lot of headbutting and a lot of resistance. And it just was not going. We like set out to do like a lighting test in a parking lot. And there was like an hour-long argument about where the lighting test should be conducted. And it was like, dude, just film everything and then like have this argument later. So for me, it just felt like wildly dysfunctional. And I remember having this very like crystalline thought of like, you know what? Like, I want to work with women. Like, I want to work with some female collaborators, because with men in creative spaces, sometimes it's very ego driven.
Yes.
But I've noticed with women in creative spaces, it's very team oriented. And that's how I've always strived to collaborate, is kind of, you just create this battlefield of ideas and everyone is kind of welcome to share their input. And so it just seems more, it seems like when you get women in the room, creativity becomes more about the macro instead of the micro. And so I had that in mind. And I have this little tradition. I'm sure other people do it too, but I refer to it as Couchella. So Coachella streams for free online. And so I don't want to go to Coachella and pay thousands of dollars to like get sand up my butt crack and whatever. But I love music. And so I would have friends over and we would like stream, like Coachella, because it's just on like YouTube or whatever. And it's fun. So it's like, if you're on stage 1 and you don't like the artist on stage 1, you click over to stage 3. And so we'll just like drink white wine and and smoke a little weed and just like hang out all day. And so I was watching Portugal, The Man, and they were playing a song. It's like purple, yellow, red, and blue. And for some reason, I got this clear image in my brain, and this will sound a little familiar to you, of a woman at like a post office mailbox. And above her is this kind of like billboard that some sort of like overly sexualized, like feminine, whether it's lingerie or perfume or something. And, you know, it has like a tagline of like unique or, you know, whatever, some like very like LA billboard. And she's standing kind of in the shadow of this expression of like, you know, commercial female sexuality. And she has like an envelope, and there's this dilemma of whether or not to mail the envelope. And then she like puts it in the post office box and walks away. So I didn't really know where that came from or what that had to do with anything, but it was just this like very, very clear image. And of course, if you've seen the pilot, you know that that's minus the billboard, which was just kind of too much to include. That is essentially the last beat of the story. And so the everything kind of got reverse engineered from that. And I had written another scene. It was just like a woman at a bar, and you think she's hitting on a guy. And then it turns out that for some reason, that's like her mission or her job. And then those two things just kind of merged. And so that is the first scene and the last scene. And then everything else just kind of grew organically from end to end. So yeah, normally with these projects, it's like a little bit more murky or, you know, whatnot. But that was like a really clear kind of like lightning bolt inspiration from couch cello.
Well, I must say, I'm happy you got that lightning bolt, because I said earlier, I really do love your work and love the
Thanks,
film.
Man.
And I'm glad you did it as 30 minutes. You didn't go down the route of allowing kind of film festival submission to define how you make something. Because I think a lot of us do that. I'm guilty of that in the past as well. But now when you have a story to tell, not saying you personally, but me, us as filmmakers or everyone out there, we have such great tools. We should just kind of make what we want to make and be separate from film festivals at times, maybe not always, but certainly at times. And you said
100%. Yeah. And just real quick on that, I think it's healthy as an artist. You want to bring them to you. The more that you go to them, that just never quite seems to work. And so I felt like this story was a little bit too complex to be in the 20 to 25 minutes, but I felt like we could kind of squeeze it into 30. And we had these conversations that were kind of like, well, where are we going to do? What are we going to do with this? Where are we going to program this? What are we going to do? And I was just very bullish on like, look, we're just here to make the thing the best it can possibly be. And if we do that, like people will squeeze stuff in, or they'll you know, they'll adjust to us if it's great, because all these, you know, all the film festival rules and submissions and whatever, they want to program great stuff. So to me, the priority should always be just make something great, and then everything else will follow. So yeah, no, I think you're 100% on the money there. And to me, that's kind of the whole calculus of like, you want to bring the powers that be to you. Because the more that you go to them, there's not going to be that kind of respect or, you know, like whatever. But if you can bring an audience or, you know, the eyeballs to your home field, I feel like that's such an advantage. And that gives you so much more artistic leverage. And I think in a way, credibility than if you're like, oh, well, South by Southwest says it has to be 20 minutes, so it'll be 20 minutes. It's kind of like, well, what are we doing then?
Yeah.
You know? So yeah, sorry. I just wanted to touch on that because that's a really great point.
No, great. I'm glad you did. And I know people listening will be happy to hear what you've just said. Cool. We can't really just always be in service to festivals or the industry, because you're right. If you're really good, they will come, you know, they will change for us. And you 100%. Mentioned earlier about working with women in terms of the team, because what they bring. And I felt while watching your film, the characters Rachel Hunter and Stephanie Wolford were phenomenal performances, for phenomenal characters.
Incredible.
What do you look for when you're casting women in terms of talent, skill?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I would say for me, it's the same thing that I look for in men, which is just, I love intelligence in actors. I love people who are collaborative, but also a little selfish to the character. Like, to me, the best thing an actor can ever say any process of filmmaking is, I don't think I would do that. Like if you're saying like, okay, so walk in the coffee shop and do this, and anytime someone says, yeah, I don't think that's this character, to me, that's what you're looking for, because it's someone who is in the head of that person and they have their own ideas. Some performers will just kind of show up and just do whatever the heck you want them to do. But I really like it where people are bringing their own ideas to the table. And so in regards to Rachel Hunter, played by the wonderful Hannah Marie Hines, and Stephanie Wilford, played by the incredible Deanna Nicole Baxter. So this whole project was written for Hannah. So Hannah is, she's so great. She's so talented. And at the time, I wouldn't say typecast, but I think a lot of the stuff that she was getting was kind of like the cute, naive girl next door. And I always felt that kind of like sold her short, or that like I saw this like incredible dramatic performer kind of like, like beneath the surface, just like begging to like explode out. And so it's funny because Hannah is a very committed woman of faith, and she's very Catholic. And so I remember getting this idea and like calling her up and being like wildly nervous to picture this idea, because it was this kind of like very like morally ambiguous kind of psychosexual sort of femme fatale. And so I honestly thought that she was going to say no. And then I don't know if the project would have happened, but I remember just like pitching her just like the concept. And I think I told her about the post office box, and I had like a very rough idea of the character and the concept. And I just remember her being like, yes, like that sounds great. Let's do it. And then I was like excited, but I remember hanging up the phone and going, oh shit, I have to like go write this now. And so, I wrote out the scripts. I gave a finished version to Hannah, and she sent it to her manager. And so everyone except for Mallory McKenzie, who's also a real life friend of Hannah's, who plays her assistant, Courtney, everyone in the film is repped by Hannah's manager. And so Deanna, who plays Stephanie Wilford, I remember we did like a reading at Hannah's apartment, and it was super informal. It was just the three of us. And, she came in and was just super sweet, and we chatted for a bit. And then they did the scene. And I just remember like a very clear switch in my brain from being like, like a professional person casting a film to just like a viewer and a watcher, and just someone who was just like so enthralled by the acting that these two people were doing, just like in this apartment 2 feet away from me. And I just remember saying like, man, if we had like a green screen, we could just like film this right now. Like that was so great. And so, that was an incredible moment to watch Deanna and Hannah just kind of like spar and go at it. And we talked a lot about, there's kind of 2 reference points to those characters, and especially to that scene where there's that big conversation. The first reference point would be Breaking Bad, that I always saw them as kind of like a Walter White, Jesse Pinkman duo, where one kind of more morally ambiguous person is pulling someone else along. And then the other reference point was Heat with Robert De Niro and Al Pacino. Classic. And that's, and so I loved this thought, and what we were aiming for in that scene in the office of that big kind of conversation is I wanted it to feel like just like a female version of Heat, in which you have these 2 women who are just like professionals and very good at what they do. And they're just kind of like testing each other out. And there's just kind of some verbal sparring, and also some kind of like maternal vibes, and maybe some kind of sisterly vibes, and maybe some friendship vibes, but also this kind of antagonistic reproach. And so, that was kind of where all all that came from. But yeah, and I would say just for me, the number one thing in terms of performers, be it male or female, is I want someone who's going to bring their own ideas to the table. I want someone who's wildly intelligent. And then I think just, you know, like just someone who, for lack of a better word, is just a professional. And that can be, that's not that you're getting lots and lots of money. That just means like you love this shit. You're going to pour your heart and soul into it. You're going to leave it all out there. And at the end of the day, like, this is what you want to do. And that's kind of how I feel. And so I really love people who have that ambition, that desire, that kind of like fire. And I don't know if that's necessarily like a gendered concept. But I think, yeah, male or female, it's about what do you have between the ears? You know, not do you have a pretty face?
I'm glad you said that about the actors coming on board with their own ideas, knowing their character, and you're happy that they do so. Because I've been in situations where directors don't want to hear anything. And I just think dumb. That's it's so dumb. It's so rude. Yeah. It's so bad, because if the actor's done their homework and they've thought about their character and they want to act upon what they really feel, it's not a case that they'll always be right, but it just shows a lot about them, and it tells you who you're working with. It's brilliant. And you mentioned professionalism, which is an interesting thing as well, where I've been in a situation where I've sent an actor a script and I've said, when you read it, please get back to me. You know, and he got back to me so late. Unfortunately, I had to recast him because I just felt, you're not serious. It's 24 hours before we're going to film. Right. And now you get back to me to say, you know, whatever. It's like, he must have had it for maybe 3 weeks. Yeah. And if he did, the thing is, if he didn't have the time, he could have just told me. Of course. You know, there's no point. And this is a dialogue driven piece as well. And the reason why I recast, and I think a lot of people will understand, is that when people are not prepared or not doing the things they need to do by themselves before they come onto the set, it's not fair on everyone else involved. 100%. It's a collaborative team effort, and everybody has to be working in certain ways.
But the way I see it is, thank God he showed that side of himself to you at that point in the process, and not later. So it's like, that's how it's like you dodged a bullet. And so it's like, how lucky are you that you found that out at that moment and not a later moment when you had already, you know, tied your ships to him or whatnot.
That's a great point. Because there would have been, you know, the DP on the day, I know he wouldn't have been particularly kind, and he would have been quite open about if things weren't going a certain way.
God bless DPs, man. DPs will always, you know, you always know what they're thinking. They're never, if they're not happy, you're never confused about them being not happy, which I think is great. God love them.
Of course, gotta love them. Yeah. And it's great that you put pen to paper for that film as well. I love writer directors, and that you cast well and stuff. Now, I'm not a natural writer. I mean,
me neither.
Really?
Yeah. I feel like
modest.
No, not at all. I think I'm a much better director than I am writer, because I think, so there's a really great David Fincher quote where he says, like, you know, everyone thinks they're a director. You don't know what it is to be a director until the sun is setting and you have to get 5 shots and you only have time to get 2. And so in those moments of chaos and panic and all that, I get really calm and things become really clear. And I've seen other directors on bigger productions and, you know, friends and all sorts of stuff just be in those moments and just kind of freak out. And normally you'll have a good support team and you can talk it out and you figure it out, but you just kind of watch that little freak out. And for whatever reason, in those moments, I don't freak out. Just like, to me, like the solution becomes so obvious, because it's like, oh, if we had this huge Steadicam shot planned and the Steadicam is broken, okay, it's handheld, or it's a 2-shot, or, it's like, I think there's a lot of people kind of hit that resistance where it's like you had a thought or an intention of what you wanted it to be, and you're kind of too tied into that. And so you're kind of stubbornly trying to push the film to be that, when it's kind of like telling you that it wants to be something else.
Yeah.
And so I think, it's that idea of like, if you have a good plan, you can abandon it for something else. And so I feel very, very comfortable in those environments. Writing to me always feels like homework. And I think like I feel like I know some like pure writers, and like they don't want to be on set. They want to be in like a log cabin with their laptop, just doing their thing. Yeah. And like, I can do that. I can get it done. I tend to write really slow over long periods of time. But I really don't feel like a natural writer. I do feel like a natural director. I was a soccer goalie in high school, and I was kind of shy kid. I was a shy kid before that. But that kind of forced me to kind of come out of my shell, because, you have to kind of like shout commands, and you see the field and all that. And so, so I feel like that I feel very, very comfortable in that environment. I do not feel as comfortable as a writer. So there you have it.
I hear what you mean. I've got a friend, and I can see him right now with slippers and a cup of tea writing. He's just that guy.
Sure.
And directing and things like that is probably not drawn to as much. I completely understand and see what you mean about that.
You're like, hey man, you want to come to set? He's like, nah, I'm good. I'll hang out.
I'll be in my apartment. Don't
totally
again. But one thing you do certainly write well are tweets. I'm gonna read one out.
Yes, right please.
Now.
Yes.
I'm going to read a great one out right now. Okay. I think that if you have someone in your life who is an artist, someone who is making art of any kind at any level, I think the odds are that person is in pain. They might hide it well. It might be from long ago, from many places, but it's there. And I wish more people knew that. So, Scott, what inspired you to write that tweet?
Gosh, I think it was just kind of a deep confession. I think it's been a tough couple years for everyone. I think it's an especially tough time to try to be, trafficking in your own imagination and trying to be a creative person. And I guess I just kind of saw it as kind of like an open letter to the lawyers and accountants and dentists and quote unquote normal people out there, just to kind of, it's like if you have an artist in your life, check in on them a little bit. And yeah, I think most people who turn to the arts do so because there's an element of inner pain that they're trying to kind of sort through. And I think especially if you look at lots of great artists, they tend to come from these very kind of like broken places. And so, yeah, I think I was just a little bit up in my own feelings that day, and just was kind of feeling that kind of struggle. And I guess I just wanted to kind of put that little message in a bottle and put it out to sea, and see if anyone responded to that.
So do you think part of the struggle and the pain that a lot of artists come from or go through is because they're seen as somewhat, in some ways, I don't know if it's the right kind of word, immature, or it's kind of childish to be an artist from the lawyer's point of view potentially, and the doctor's point of view potentially? It's like being an actor or a director or a musician is something that you do in adolescence, and then you grow up and get a real job. Do you think that may be part of the problem?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a really great book called The Artist's Way that kind of talks about this problem and this process, and how I would say, I'm just kind of figuring this out as we go, so bear with me, but I would say that that's almost like the secondary pain, because clearly there's something that puts you down that path to begin with, be it a relationship with a parent, a relationship with a friend or crush or whatever, or yourself. There's something in people that kind of like turns them to the arts. And I would say that by and large, and this isn't 100% true or accurate, but I would say by and large, most people who seek creative outlets are doing so to kind of process something or figure something out, or there's clearly like a very deeply internal wound or yearning or desire or longing that is kind of the origin of that. And then I think that kind of gets you to that secondary pain, which is kind of seeking that kind of acknowledgement or validation or professional or lifestyle validation, for lack of a better word, that there's that first thing that kind of brings you to it. And then of course, once you're there, you're trying to be either seen as legitimate or be legitimate, and that's kind of its own struggle. But I think there's that initial struggle that happy kids don't tend to pour out pages and pages and pages in their journals. They're just out happy and having fun. And so I think there's something about it doesn't have to be horrific, but I think there's some element of longing or daydreaming or just like wishing that things were different that kind of pulls people more into creative fields. And I think kind of as adults, we get quite good at hiding that or masking it. But I think it's always kind of there. And so I think that was kind of the big thing that I just wanted to speak to, that artists are by and large very broken people. And I think art is the best way to stitch yourself back up. And I think if you're lucky, you'll find that your art helps other people stitch themselves back up. And so, yeah.
Amazing. And when you feel like you're not getting acknowledgement for what you do, or you're not being validated for what you do as an artist, how do you cope with that? And what do you do to try and get validation or acknowledgement in maybe other ways to make up for it?
Man, definitely, I think substances, I think drinking and distraction, there's kind of the lower vibrational stuff where, that's kind of like the easier fix. But then I think the deeper level stuff is kind of, it's almost like, there's a great line from Succession the other day where Tom says, like, don't have hope. Like they can't get you if you don't have hope. And so that's almost kind of how I feel like that's kind of the rhythm that I've settled into, is that like, it's not so much how do you deal with like rejection or disappointment or seeking acknowledgement. It's almost like, well, how would you deal with success? How would you deal with good stuff? Because you're kind of so used to stagnation, rejection, false, like everyone has the story of like, I met this guy and he read my script and he loved it. And he said, he's going to sign me and Tom Cruise is going to be in the movie. And oh my God, I'm going to buy a Ferrari tomorrow. And then, immediately falls apart. And so, yeah, I don't know. I think in terms of dealing with that, it's almost so baked in to the Hollywood experience that it's almost kind of like asking a fish, how do you deal with water? Okay. That it's like you almost have to kind of step out and think about it. But yeah, I mean, I think I'm, I'll play a little Rocket League and listen to some records, and then it's kind of like, well, like back in the driver's seat. And so yeah, I think sometimes you can kind of use that for fuel, and almost maybe like a Kanye way, where it's like if someone criticizes you, it's almost like a dare, and you can kind of put that in your engine and drive really far and really fast. And so I think sometimes, I forget who said this, but I think it's some writer, author who said that like spite is like the best creative force out there, that like more novels and love songs and movies have been written from like spite than anything else. And I think there's something, there's something about that as a writer where, the more that you get told no, the more that you kind of tell those people like, well, I'll show this fucker, there's kind of this kind of, not arrogance and not confidence and not even cockiness, but just kind of, just a little bit of like a FU attitude that I think is healthy and good. And I think a lot of good work can kind of come from that place of dealing with that pain, dealing with that rejection, dealing with, I'm sure every single artist listening or out there or anything has someone in their life who every time they see them at Thanksgiving, they ask like, so how's that acting thing going?
Yeah.
And from the tone, the exact subtextual implications of what they're saying. And there's always someone out there in your life who sees what you're doing as a hobby or finger painting or, an activity at recess. And I think you just have to keep going and just push through it.
Yeah, I agree. You have to, or potentially it gets to the point where you have to cut this person out.
Sure.
The level of respect given is not what you want. So at times to protect yourself, you have to say, I'm not prepared to have that nonsense anymore.
You can keep them just close enough that you can use them as spite fuel, but not close enough that they can actually like cause you harm with what they say. So, so it's like maybe every now and then you could check in with them just to get like a really great pull quote that you can put up in your locker room and then go write, 100 pages that week or something. That's an option. That's an option too. It depends on the person, but yeah.
It's a really good idea. I like that one, Scott. So Scott, what can we see from you next? What have you got coming out next that we might be able to watch?
Yeah, of course. That's that's what I'm working on. I wrote this boxing pilot. It's an hour long. It's called Uppercut. And it's kind of, it's about this guy training for a fight that's never going to happen. So it's a little bit of like a Hollywood parable, or just kind of like taking feelings of being kind of like stuck and wanting to go pro and trying to just get that fight, man. I just want to get a fight. I just want to get in the arena, and it's kind of, to me, it was an opportunity to kind of talk about the creative process and artists and some Los Angeles stuff, but do it in a more cinematic way and in a more filmable kind of external way. And so I just kind of took that story and kind of transposed it into the world of boxing. And so I'm looking to kind of raise some funds for that. It's about as low budget as it could be, but you still gotta pay people for their time and locations and food and all that. And so, I'm kind of all systems go on getting that off the ground. That feels for me like a really good stepping stone. I want to write and direct features, and I'm kind of a little bit, I think I'd be really, really happy working at a small scale where you have a lot of creative control and not a lot of resources. But I also think I'd be happy working at a very large scale where you have all the resources in the world, but you're a little bit more of like a shepherd or a team player than you are like an auteur or a creative visionary. So for me, Uppercut at an hour long feels like a really great stepping stone between, a half hour pilot and Neither and Both, which, I'm certainly proud of. And I think it's great. But I don't know if I could quite leverage that to get, $2 million on a feature length film. So I'm kind of seeing another kind of low budget, high ambition, hour long pilot is like a really great connective piece. So that's what I'm working on. I'm writing the first personal script that I've ever written. And that is wild. And I've taken it in kind of like a John Hughes, Charlie Kaufman direction. Very meta and weird. I'm a character in it. Myself as a director will wander into the frame and get in arguments with the character. There's a younger version of me. I play like a bartender. It's about like 3 relationships that I had once. And so, yeah, it's just very strange and surreal. And hopefully it will be a movie about how we make movies about ourselves. So that's kind of a little bit more out there and weird, but also like deeply personal. And so that's kind of its own brand of terrifying. Because if you're writing something about yourself, then it has to be great. It can't just be okay or good, because then what are you doing? So there's kind of that external pressure. So that's like a lot of fun, but then Uppercut is just very, very grounded and very filmable. Again, I wrote it for a friend, who I know through, working at a rooftop bar in downtown Los Angeles. He grew up like wrestling, and he's a very smart guy. He reads a lot, but he's also has this like very primal energy where like we were working one shift together, and he was kind of like roughhousing with me. And he, I'm an only child. He has a lot of brothers. So he was being like very brotherly and kind of, all up in my grill and whatever. And I just kind of said like, Mike, like, gosh, like leave me alone. And he just goes like, I gotta like fuck something or kill something. It's like, Jesus Christ, Mike. And so I remember walking away and being like, I gotta write a boxing thing for that guy. This dude has like crazy energy. This is like a good raw, this guy would do great in a boxing universe. And so that's kind of where that came from, ironically enough. But yeah, so kind of balancing things of small and grounded and just intimate human drama. And then really kind of on the other hand, really like weird and out there and fantastical. And I guess I'm setting a lot of projects in Los Angeles. So I guess that's, you could say that's a genre trope that I'm into, I suppose. It's a fascinating place. So, yeah.
Well done, man. I love that. I love the range of your ideas and
thanks.
Range of what you're thinking. It's amazing, and I can't wait to see more from you, Scott. I really can't. But Scott, we're gonna have to wrap things up now.
Let's do it.
Brilliant talking to you, and I'm gonna put your Vimeo page in the show notes and other information about you, because I really want more people to check out what you're doing and to see your work. And there's a lovely short film about a lady who wants breast implants that people should watch that one as well.
Yes. Seeley, written by Hannah Marie Hines, who starred in Neither and Both. And so that was a wonderful shoot. Very proud of that one too. Thank you.
Oh, and you should be. Beautifully shot as well.
Thanks, man.
I really, really enjoyed it. So Scott, we'll speak soon, and thank you so much for coming on Filmmaking Conversations.
I'd love to come back. This was so great. Thank you so much, Damien.
Anytime, Scott. You got something coming up? You want to put the word out about anything? Anytime.
I appreciate that. Will do. Thanks so much, man. Have a great day.
If you enjoyed listening to this episode, please do hit the subscribe button or leave a review on iTunes.